The age of sail. We romanticize it. There's pirates and explorers and great expeditions. But the reality could be pretty brutal. Life on board those ships was not all glamorous adventure. It was, in fact, an era of unimaginable violence and sickness and storms and desperation. We're talking death by typhus and dysentery. Grape shot to the neck. You get the picture. Today, I'm teaming up once again with my friends on the After Dark podcast, Dr. Maddy Pelling and Dr. Anthony Delaney. We're going to be exploring the dark reality of this extraordinary era and whether or not we think we would have stood a chance of surviving it ourselves. Let's get into it.
Okay, we've done a lot of ship episodes on After Dark. We have done, and I'm going to list them now, and you won't remember a single one.
I'll tell you if I remember them.
The Terror in Erebus.
Remember that one?
Okay. Mutiny on the Bounty.
Yes.
The ghost ship Mary Celeste.
Not a clue.
Really?
Don't remember that. No.
Wow, okay. The Batavia, you must remember the
Batavia.
Batavia.
I remember
that
the
was
Batavia,
quite sick. And we got a lot of people writing in.
We did.
Who'd been
I still
to the
get pictures of the
museum
Batavia.
in Australia. Okay, but today we are joined by the captain of the good ship history history, our lodestar
Yes,
and
Maddy,
hand
well
on the
done.
tiller.
Did you make that up yourself or is it in your notes?
Absolutely did not. This is part of the
it's in
script.
the
Very
notes,
well
okay.
done. It's only bloody Dan Snow. Hello, Dan.
Hey, guys.
How are you doing?
I've heard many of your ship episodes. I love the Batavia. That was cool.
Everyone loves the Batavia.
And do they do well? Because if so, I've got.
Yes.
I promise I've got more where that came
Ships
from.
do
Really?
very
Ships
well.
disastrous.
Really well, yeah.
And
Yeah.
also the stories of the sort of desperate struggle to survive
Yeah.
after the ship
Yeah.
sinks. Okay,
And I think it's like
guys,
this,
you
this
come to the right place.
enclosed world narrative, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like everything is happening
Yes.
within this wooden world and people are really intrigued
And
by
when human
that.
nature breaks down.
Yes,
of course.
yeah.
You
and
just
what
can't beat
does. So, Dan, we're talking about the 16th to the 19th century, generally speaking, in today's episode. This is a really formative part of life at sea and what we understand of the history of life at sea. But how kind of wild and dark is this particular time period for naval travel?
Well, it is a formative time, as you say, for life. It's a formative time for our planet. I mean, the reason that the world looks the way it does is because these Western Europeans who'd played they hadn't been at the forefront of sort of human development at that point in history. We're talking about the Basques, we're talking about the Portuguese, we're talking about the Bretons, the Normans, the Cornish, the people from Devon, people from Bristol. So these are the peninsulas on the end of the peninsula of Eurasia. It just explodes, and they start making obviously huge, cultural interaction elsewhere and borrowing technology, and out of this, the sort of milieu of the 15th century comes these gigantic ships capable of ocean travel, the Chinese had evolved fascinatingly and sort of turned away from, but capable of sailing around the world for the first time, for example, crossing the Pacific for the first time, for example, and those become these engines of unimaginable transformation. Famous. They take smallpox in America. I mean, just Americas alone, Europeans arrive, 90% of the indigenous population in the Americas, as I've heard on your podcast many times, will die over the next 200 years, right? So that's because of these ocean-going ships and the disease they unwittingly travelled across in. They are the most complex objects ever created by human beings to that point in history. Look at HMS Victory in the sort of middle of this period, 1750s. It's laid down and fights the Battle of Trafalgar, famously 1805. There's 800 people on board. You imagine the logistics keep them all alive on these long ocean journeys. There is something like 20 miles of rope required. Yeah. Hundreds of oak trees have gone into the construction of that. There is cutting edge science there in terms of guns, in terms of the navigational equipment. So, I mean, you're talking technological revolution and which in turn, and copper sheathing on the bottom, which in turn is an engine for further industrial revolution. This is military, industrial, complex stuff, right? So, but for the human beings on board, to get to the point, unimaginable. I mean, unimaginable, because sailing is miserable today. Right, sailing. Like, I've crossed the Irish Sea many times.
Yes,
and you just
I.
wish you were anywhere else in the world, right? There are seasickness, and that's with GPS. That is with waterproof clothing.
You have done more than just cross the Irish Sea, though. So this is why this is really interesting, because actually, okay, I know technology has changed. I know the experience is slightly different, but at the baseline, those waves stay the same, and you have gone quite a way around the world in some of these things. And what is that? What does that do to you in terms of your understanding of the world? How does that shift things?
So what it does to me is I find you can study the history And then usually when you study history and you go somewhere, like you guys
Mm-hmm.
have been to places, oh yeah, I can understand this is this is beautiful. I get why this story happened in this community in this place. I understand less. Like I've been in a big storm in the Southern
so
Ocean,
interesting.
and I actually go, I have actually no idea. How they
Yeah.
survived. No idea at all how any human being
Did this.
could survive with the equipment they had at the
In the
time.
18th century.
It's simply
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
unimaginable.
Is that, Dan, is that what grabs your imagination about it, though? Because there is that mystery that you can, as a sailor yourself, go out to some of these places and actually you're not getting any closer to the history.
Yeah, no,
Like,
you're getting further away.
Yeah,
'Cause
like,
when
is
you
that
read-
what appeals?
Yeah, I guess so. Because you read an account of Vasco da Gama's voyage to India for the first time a sort of European ship has left from Europe, sailed around the bottom of Africa and reached India. And I mean, just the weather, the other humans they have to deal with, the issues within the crews, the equipment failures in the crews. I mean, the ship sinking, the scurvy. When you get scurvy, of course, no one knows. No one has a clue about these
Yeah,
things.
what it is. Yeah.
Your old wounds open up, your teeth become loose in the gums. It's unimaginable. We've got corpses lying next to the barely living. You've got just a handful of men left steering the ship. I mean, just total breakdown. These, I guess, what I find fascinating about it, it's a bit like sort of mountaineering or. When people say, why are you interested in military history? It's not because you're like a sort of bonkers Spitfire passion. You know, I love a Spitfire, but it's for me, it's
Roll
like
it back
Spitfire
down.
people will be writing in.
it's never. You cannot find humans placed in more extreme situations
I agree.
than in those trenches of the First World War, or in that front line of Roman Legion, or battling around Cape Horn on the Wager that's been the subject of that, or the Bounty you guys had talked about. They had a rough time going around the Horn, or Drake entering the Pacific. I cannot. The humans cannot be in a more, and actually are artificial. They're not meant to be out there in a wooden tub in the 16th century eating weird food, battered by those winds. We're not designed for that.
Let's talk then about these vessels themselves, because you say they're such complex objects, Dan, and that really interests me. And sidebar, by the way, as someone who grew up in Staffordshire and who,
a long
Reginald
way from the
Mitchell,
sea.
home of the Spitfire,
Oh, yeah.
how dare you? Yeah, and it is a long way from the sea, that's very true. I'm someone who can appreciate the sea from the shoreline. Gorgeous, love it.
Nice view, nice
but
backdrop.
Don't want to be on the water. No, thank
you not?
No, absolutely not. Under any
I
circumstance.
think I'd like to
The only
do
time I
it.
want to be on the water is I want to be buried like a Viking and pushed out to sea and set fire to.
Okay.
Specifically from Lindisfarne. So if anyone,
Good
if
bloody
anyone
hell.
I die,
Really?
can
She's
someone
thought
do
about
that?
this.
Wowee.
Oh yeah, that's the plan. That's
Welcome
my
to
plan.
After Dark,
Yeah.
where we think about our funerals.
Of course we do.
Yeah, of course we do. I have to.
And interestingly, in a ship, but yeah, the rest of the time, no. But let's talk about some of these vessels, because Dan, you've been on replica versions of these, and of course, you can still. You mentioned the Victory. Is that at Portsmouth or Southampton? Portsmouth.
How could you? Only someone from Staffordshire could ask that
Yeah,
question.
sorry, I know.
Portsmouth.
terrible.
We're getting regional now,
Or as we
guys.
call it,
It's all just the
HQ.
south to me.
The south.
Yeah, it's just the south.
Wow, that's monstrous.
But that's I have been there, and I have been on Victory, and it's such an incredible space. Telling that thing I found most interesting was the officers' quarters and the interiors, the furniture. Like that's what interested me. Is
Beautiful.
and the complete beauty, the complete sort of giving over to aesthetics in a space that is otherwise completely functional. That fascinated me.
Designed to inflict murder. It's bizarre.
Yeah, exactly. But let's talk about these vessels though, because you say they're designed to inflict murder. They are designed in this really complex way to keep a whole community of people alive. They are also war machines. They are for going across the globe, getting to places that in lots of instances people have never gone to before, certainly not Western Europeans. So what is it about these objects that is so remarkable?
They're a product of hellish compromises, because you can build a boat that goes fast, you can build a boat that's safe in big storms, you can build a boat that can carry lots of goods and make lots of money when you get home, or you can build a boat that can put lots of cannon on and rain death down on your enemy. And you can build a boat that's designed to go to uncharted territory with shallow draft and a thick-built keel, so if you do bump on the old coral reef, you get away with it. Or you can build a boat which you're very confident in where you're going and you just want to get there, to and fro very quickly. And so what you get in this period is this mad melange where everyone's just going, we'll have a bit of this. So everything's a compromise. It's a nightmarish compromise, as you know from the Bounty. They're sort of trying to stick all this breadfruit in. You've got the crew all packed in, all falling out with each other. So Captain Cook chooses for his trips of exploration to the Pacific, he chooses these colliers, these ships that were designed to carry coal from roughly speaking, Newcastle to London. So you're always choosing the right, and if you choose the wrong ship, you're in big trouble. So you're trying to design for all of these different jobs and all of these different conditions. You sail from Portugal to India, you're leaving the North Atlantic. You are going through the doldrums, the place where there's no wind and it's incredibly hot on the equator. You're crossing the line. You're going through. Then you're going around the tip of southern Africa. It could be driving. It could be gale force winds. Hurricane force winds, and then you're going up into the monsoon of India. So, I mean, how on earth are you building a ship that's capable? How do you plan for that?
And I suppose as well, people on board these ships often don't agree what the function of them is. I'm thinking about Cook's voyages when, Joseph Banks, the botanist on board, is like, I want to bring all of these plants that we found, and everyone's like, no, there's no. You can bring some of them, but that's not quite that many.
And the owners are always saying to the skippers, like, we want you to make more space for all these goods. We're going to make more profit on the nutmeg. We're going to bring back from the east. The skipper's like, yeah, but I've got to take more supplies for my crew. Yeah. And then it's like, I don't know about the crew. Come on, there won't be that many left by the time you get back.
There'll be loads of room.
and the mortality on these ships, it is simply extraordinary to me why anybody went on these ships. Magellan sails around, he doesn't make, he's killed in Southeast Asia. And I mean, a handful of the hundreds of men that leave.
You say this, but you'd be on one too.
Well, I tell you, as an 17-year-old, I probably would have done, because and I think it's the same reason that we send young men into battle, because at the Battle of the Somme, they know there's going to be, well, maybe not the Somme, but certain stages, Passchendaele, for example, later, there's going to be horrific casualties, and I think every one of those 18-year-olds think it's not going to be them.
There's a naivety to it.
And I think if you're a second son, if you're an island, and you're being beasted by the Protestants, you think, actually, I might just
doesn't escape.
And so the algorithm feeds you the success, right?
Yes,
You get dead men don't tell tales. What you do see is the local lad that's made good. Everyone knows who Sir Francis Drake is. Comes from a very modest family, becomes one of the richest men in Tudor England because of his buccaneering piracy, call it what you will, on the high seas. And so you're all thinking about Drake. You are not thinking about the hundreds of men that followed Drake. Hundreds of men who know only watery graves.
Let's talk about then this idea of, we're talking about these people who choose this and who go on this as a form of maybe adventure or escape or whatever it might be. But there are also things called press gangs and press ganging. Tell us what that is. And this could never be me, by the way. I would want comfortable lodgings if I was going to sea. That would be on my rider if I was going. But this isn't exactly what we're getting with press ganging.
This is the opposite of riders.
Yeah.
So the British government realised, the British Imperial Project realised that the defence of the ocean around Britain is so essential that you will allow the Navy to breach our sort of God-given rights of an Englishman, which are obviously only partially implemented, and there's a lot of hypocrisy. But there was an idea on the continent: if you're a divine right ruler on the continent, you're a sort of tyrant. You just grab anyone you want, stick them in the army, and throw them to the front line. In Britain, you're not allowed to do that. You have to actually recruit people. You have to. So you take the. You have to take the king's shilling. Now there's all sorts of skullduggery in the army. You go and you get them drunk and they sign up. They realize. So look, it's in practice. I think it may have looked quite similar, but the Navy were literally allowed to round people up. They could just come and knock on your door, and drag you away, and then you could be at sea for years.
Oh God,
it is hardcore.
Yeah,
there is, but typically how this was used, there was the hot press, which was we're just going to take everyone, and that was in times of emergency, the outbreak of the Napoleonic War, for example. Typically, what you do is you don't want landsmen on board. You don't want people that don't know the ropes. That expression, because it's incredibly dangerous.
I've just gotten that expression.
I mean, when you go on one of these tall ships, there is a forest of ropes. Each one has a very precise purpose.
Don't know the ropes, of course.
Yeah, so you go,
that's great.
Grab the halyard of the fore staysail.
I'd be like, stop yelling at me. I don't know what to do.
Then you get hit with a little whip thing as well. But anyways, so actually you want mariners. So what they do is you'd go on the quayside, you go to sailors' pubs, and you burst in and just drag them off. So they typically you're taking them from the merchant fleet. So it's not the case on the whole that they're like breaking into your house up country in a farming community. They're just like, sorry lads, you're all coming to sea. But there are some examples of people getting caught up in the press. Yeah.
Wow, and it's so telling that this happens for the Navy and not necessarily the Army. As you say, there are other forms of pushing people into the Army. At home, I have I got it at an auction. It's an old pewter mug that's got, I think it's from a regiment that was in India in the 19th century, and it has a glass bottom, and the idea was that you take the king's shilling, so someone would pop the shilling in your drink and you'd be drinking, and then when you got to the bottom of it, you'd be like, oh shit, somebody's given me this. And the glass was to check that nobody had done that to you. So there were other ways to do that, but I think the fact that this is happening to the Navy shows how important the British Navy is in this moment, right? That it just needs a constant supply of men because so many of them are going to die out there.
Many of them are going to die. They just require huge manning. There's no the peacetime Navy was smashed because no one's paying any tax, so it's reduced to a shadow of itself. And then in wartime, you have to take all the wrappers off all those ships that are anchored there in the Medway or in Rochester or elsewhere, and then you just have to surge crew on board them. So there's no sort of TA, no reserve, no National Guard. It's really, really intense. But there is a lot of volunteering. I should say Captain Cook famously volunteered. He left the coal trade and volunteered in the Navy. So it could be a route to wealth and a social escalator for men like Captain Cook, who was born illiterate in Yorkshire. So to a working family. So the Navy could be, and also if a captain's successful, Captain Cochrane, he was famous for being lucky. And he would often stumble across enemy vessels, and you got prize money. You got a share of that. The crew got a very small share, but they got a share of that prize money. So he never struggled to get recruits. So people would sign on to serve with him.
Interesting. So sort of like celebrity captains.
Bet. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. Okay, so we've been press ganged. We've made it onto a Royal Navy ship.
Speak for yourself. I definitely have not been press
Some
ganged.
of us are less happy about it than others.
I'm like the surgeon on board or something. I have to have some form of comfort.
You think you have a choice in there.
I don't know. They
thanks,
wouldn't look. Come on. If you were press ganging, would you come for me? No.
But you know what? I think you're whether you're doing this on purpose or not. The famous character from Master and Commander, who's the Irish surgeon, played by Paul Bettany. So I'm seeing it, the sort of handsome, chiseled, rather.
You can stop there, Dan. It's fine. You've said enough.
Slightly uncomfortable in the maritime world around him, but an intellectual.
Yeah, sure. I'll take all of that. That's what I will be. I'll tell
you later what the surgeon has to do in battle.
Oh shit! I haven't seen that show. I need to that film. I need to watch it actually. I think I quite like it.
Okay, so we're on the ship. Obviously we don't know the ropes necessarily. Well, you might do if you were an experienced sailor already, but we certainly don't. No. What is life going to be like aboard? What's our daily routine?
Okay, so if we're on, sorry, listen, this is all very. I mean, if we're on let's go Royal Navy.
Yep.
So, and let's go sort of roughly speaking, the sort of famous age of sail that people be familiar with, the era of Nelson and things. So things are getting sorted out. This is a long way actually from the age of Drake, where it was all quite freelancey and just utterly chaotic. I mean, again, how anyone survived in the 6th century, actually, I almost don't know. And Drake indeed did, in fact, die at sea, but he almost died very early in his career in a particularly rough crossing of the Atlantic, having been ambushed by the Spanish very early on. Anyway, so if you're in the sort of age of Nelson, you're being paid. There is food provided for you. There's a lot of historians like to argue about this, as you'd expect. A lot of it differed from ship to ship. There were some brutal captains, no doubt, sort of traumatized lunatics or just psychopathic, and they would flog. So some crews were quite famous as being some ships quite famous for being sort of flogging ships, where the cat and nine tails would come out. Which is a cat and with a cat is a whip with 9 strands to it, knotted strands, and it would be 9 of them. So cat 9 tails, and you'd be flogged for a whole range of misdemeanors. There was also just arbitrary punishment that got banned as you go through the 8th century, which is senior rates could just sort of whack you with a little whip occausly if you just needed to.
As long as it's a little whip, then it's fine.
Exactly.
Just needed a little bit of encouragement.
Remind you of your duties. Yeah. There was a lot of booze involved. I mean, I really do think that without alcohol, this age of European expansion, which would rewrite the demography of the planet and the political strategic balance of the planet, I think it was almost impossible. And unless people are drinking alcohol, I think it would have been completely intolerable.
Isn't it so depressing, though? Can you imagine waking up the next morning with a head on you like a hammer, where you're going, oh my God, I'm stranded in the middle of, I don't even know where I am. Yeah. The world that I thought I knew in Portsmouth or wherever it is, whatever little harbour town.
The South,
the general South is totally gone. And here I am with a pounding headache in some kind of a hammock or on some kind of a wooden slat thing, depending on what the accommodation was. That's not where I'm.
You'd be used to it, I guess. After a few days, you'd be like, I just lived with this.
Yes, true.
So 14 inches, by the way, for your hammock, you're bumping up against people all the time. I referred to Drake again, but Drake lied to his crew, said he wasn't going around the world. They all thought they were going to the Eastern Mediterranean. So he sails past Morocco, and they all start going,
hold on a second.
Where are you off to, mate?
When are we going home?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I'm tired.
But I do think that's really interesting, though, that you are at the whim of the person in charge of the ship often. I'm thinking about Mutiny on the Bounty and Captain Bligh, and obviously that doesn't go that well for him in the end, but he's someone who has a very strict idea of what discipline should be aboard the ship and how he's going to run it, and it is incredibly unpopular from the get-go. And if you've been press ganged into maybe an infamous ship where, you know, the crew is brutally punished, the person in charge is someone who's well known for being violent and meting out these things. I mean, it's not an appealing life. And if you suddenly end up on a ship like that and you realise what you're doing, where you're going, what's happening, you can't turn around. There's no jumping off. You're just stuck in that situation.
And yet there's very few examples of mutiny in the Royal Navy in the era of Nelson. There are a few, but the things, and well, there's some famous examples around weirdly pay, mostly in the 1790s. But there are examples of sort of mutinies that happen on a ship like the Bounty, and there aren't many where the crew just go, I'm absolutely done with this guy. You know, this guy is completely bizarre.
Yeah.
So and I think, you know, the Royal Navy by that period is pretty professional. There is an understanding that actually the best way to get a crew to sail fast and for everyone to win here is to sort of roughly speaking work with the grain.
Yeah.
And it's not, now listen, there are different periods, different times, different places. There are obviously slave ships that are just a port where they take enslaved Africans across across the Atlantic to be sold in the Caribbean and the Americas. The conditions on those are unimaginable. Huge numbers of enslaved men, women, and children dying and left in amongst their fellow prisoners, shackled. They couldn't sit up, they couldn't stand up below deck. So there are there are all sorts of different types, and the crews on those ships were, you know, fantastically cruel. And I think in turn their officers would have been. But by this period, you're in the Royal Navy, you're getting a sense that like let's try good leadership. There is beginnings a little bit of HR. There's a little bit of sort of managing the crew, and also if you don't want the crew to just jump overboard when you do arrive at a port and abscond, which would happen as well. You do think I might try and keep them a little bit sweet. So it's not.
Yeah.
Recent scholarship has said that actually it was. I mean, modern humans won't be able to cope with it. It's a brutally hard life, but punishment wasn't the worst feature of it, probably.
It's, for me, I think this idea that you're talking about of being rowing together in more cases than not is you know, it's certainly what we encounter. Obviously, when we cover these ship histories, something usually goes wrong. So actually, it's an exception in those cases, and we're very aware that it's an exception. But when you're talking, Dan, about like press ganging and bringing groups of people together who may not necessarily encounter one another in everyday life otherwise, I'm imagining that it can still be quite tension-filled, bringing and potentially that there's like dangerous elements, individuals that are brought on. Do we have accounts of that happening?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I don't want to get the old woke history. Don't slide into our DMs of the woke history. But everyone who goes on board a ship at this time says it was an extraordinarily cosmopolitan place. So you hear Danish, there are people from North Africa. There are people of colour. There are a lot of Irish.
Yes,
a vast number of Irish.
We tend to get on the sea if we can.
Like 40%
you get everywhere,
of
you
guys. An astonishing portion of Nelson's fleet at Trafalgar, off the top of my head, were Irish. Yeah, astonishing.
I didn't know that.
We don't know that in Ireland.
Yeah.
You know, we're very difficult with those histories. We're
exactly.
not comfortable with them.
That's difficult history. And so obviously Waterloo, as you know as well, the land armies, famously these Irish units and Irishmen serving in English units. Anyway, so yes, that's why it's thought rich, and you're all living within unbelievably confined space. There is disease. One of the things they were very careful about. So yes, there is a lot of focus on troublemakers, dealing with troublemakers. They might be lashed. They might. I suspect you'd get rid of a troublemaker. You'd say actually, get rid of them at the first port of call. If there's a sort of socialist revolutionary on board, it'd be a bit anachronistic. You might, which you do see in some of these mutinies in the 1790s. See kind of individual leaders described as troublemakers, but they got quite political. And I think that, but so that's why discipline and discipline, apart from anything else, so less even than the harmoniousness of the ship, weeing and pooing is a massive issue.
Yeah,
because in the middle of the night it's howling gale up above, and
you
go actually
inches from someone else.
I might just go and have a quick wee down the side of the ship. And French ships were famously unhygienic from that point of view. But the Brits were obsessed with cleanliness. because they'd learned from bitter experience.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking 1500, 1600. Fleets get wiped out by disease. Like, there's a French fleet in the 18th century, 7 Years' War, that arrives back in Brest, and then passes on that sort of plague basically to the people of Brest. I mean, wipes out French naval, and it further undermines the French naval capability in that first that war. So so the Brits were really, really strict on that. So there were serious punishments, even for having a little wee down the side. What do you think? No one will notice in there. It's dark, pitch black in there. Bear in mind, right?
Yeah.
And no, you had to use the heads. You had to go up to the head of the ship and use the heads, and that there where the seawater would spray and wash off the whatever it was, you know.
Do you think, I suppose because these ships are floating microcosms of the British Empire, they embody these values. We have, the men below decks with their sort of earthenware mugs, and then you've got, beautiful blue and white porcelain in the officers' quarters. Like, everything is coded according to the structures and hierarchies of the world back in Britain. Do you think it's fair to say, with the exception, I mean, you've referenced the 1790s mutinies. I'm thinking of Spithead and Nore in particular, which obviously happened somewhere in the south. I don't know. It's just the south, somewhere near there. But, very, very close to home. Whereas, do you think it's fair, Dan, to say that the mutinies that occur, the famous ones at least in this period, are happening when ships are getting further and further away from that centre of empire and that
I think
that
a
idea
little
of
bit,
home?
when the elastic's stretched. I mean, there are times when if a ship's company arrives back in Britain and they were expecting either leave or to be released from having press conference, and they literally that day go, sorry, turn around, lads. You're all transferring now onto HMS, Tonnant. We're leaving port tomorrow, and there were issues.
That still happens in the army today.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you're not there because you want to be, then it's quite.
Yeah, if you haven't chosen it, it's a different thing.
But on the whole, yes, if you're by yourself on the other side of the world and things get a bit loose, you can imagine. I mean, the Bounty is a great example of that. I think again, though, I want to say that the nature of the sea in the army. Posh people can buy a command with absolutely no experience, because there's various theories around that. One is that you want posh people in command of an army because they're revolutionary entities. You've got the experience of Oliver Cromwell in Britain and Ireland. You do not want normal, common people being in charge of an army that can march into London and take over power and execute the king. Navies are, so in army, you want posh people. Also, all they have to do really is show that there's an old expression in the British Army: sergeants teach men how to fight. Officers teach men how to die. So if you just get your gear on, stand up straight back in front of the men as the French are advancing, and don't flinch when the bullets start, that's sort of the job of an officer.
That's how you're going to do it.
Most people can do that, right? If you want to.
Probably not me, but
now,
most other people.
Now, you give someone the keys of a naval ship. These are the most expensive thing the British state is building at this point. You want somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, there is patronage, surprise, surprise, well-connected and posher people tend to rise to the top, but there are exams that you have to pass. There is an apprenticeship you have to serve. You have to do years at sea. People like Captain Cook can move up the ranks.
Yeah.
So there is a meritocracy there. And therefore, they are quite, given the, in all the panoply of the Georgian state, there were people who knew what they were doing in charge of these ships, and they knew how to run a crew. They'd gone to sea at 14. And so I think they were quite good at, and some of them didn't need to use the lash. Some of them were good at keeping that very heterodox, crazy, multi-confessional, multi-ethnic ship's company all pointing in the same direction. I think that's just experience. These were really, really good sailors.
Yeah, the fact that so many of them have gone to sea so young. I'm thinking of, is it Thomas Raffles, Joseph Raffles, who goes to Singapore? He was born on a ship.
Right.
And so, his mother literally gave birth to him at sea. And so there's so many people like that who are just knocking around this system.
Son of a gun.
Yeah, who
Fancy
literally
that, Maddie? Fancy giving birth on a ship?
Oh my God.
That's a no.
I'm in denial and will not be giving birth at any point. Thank you very much.
Yeah. It's not happening.
It's not. I choose not to.
We were talking about all of these things that, you're talking down about keeping order is important, and it's actually relatively common and sometimes inspiringly so, depending on who's at the helm and all of those things. But some things you don't have control of, or to a lesser extent. And I'm talking specifically about one of the big things that we all hear about when we talk about these ships' history, and that is scurvy. Ooh. What exactly? I think, for me, I think limes, I think vitamin C deficiency. But what does that actually look like if you are on board one of these ships?
It's a hellish thing. They didn't know. So you can't transport fresh vegetables. So the food is salted beef, salted pork, bit of dried fish sometimes. And it's vegetables for the first 2 days, and then none, and then hardtack, so bread that's baked super hard and will last. And you whack it to get the weevils to come out of it, and then you soak it in
What's a weevil?
A weevil's just a little sort of it looks like a little caterpillar.
Oh, they're actual insects.
Yeah, they're insects. Yeah.
Oh,
So you whack it. Some people ate the weevils for protein.
not for me, but okay.
And you dip it in, you dip it in your punch and your ramen, and so and you try and sort of gnaw into it, just so your molars would get torn out. And so that is a diet without vitamin C, and that is why on long journeys like Dargama, like Magellan, like frankly, like most of like the Wager, like anyone you can mention, like Anson going around the world, he takes a load of Chelsea pensioners with him. These old guys he can't find enough people, so he takes old people from the army's retirement community, and all their old wounds from decades before start opening up your whole body. I mean, scurvy.
Oh my God.
Scurvy is really bad.
That's quite zombification.
It's zombification.
Yeah.
I actually don't know why my kids don't get scurvy because they've always
Do you know someone in my university hall's got scurvy?
Really?
Yeah.
What?
That's going some.
It was a boy, obviously.
That's white toast.
Yeah,
every day.
yeah. White toast and like cans of Coke. I think that's literally
That's
yeah,
insane.
wild.
That is insane. So no, and that's hellish. And then of course you've got shipwrecks as well, which is loss of life at sea. I mean, you will lose more men in a shipwreck than you do in a battle.
You will lose more men in a shipwreck than you will in battle. Okay,
so more people, Battle of Trafalgar people have heard of. More Brits are killed when the Royal George capsizes off Portsmouth than in the Battle of Trafalgar. More people were killed when with Queen Caroline, HMS Queen Caroline, in fact, blew up by mistake then were killed in the Battle of Nantes. I mean, so these are mass casualty events when these ships sink. And then in the 19th century, you got the complication of they're trying to use all this new technology and incorporate steel and iron and heavy guns and things on all these ships. So you get HMS Captain, where it's the highest. The most number of naval personnel killed in an instant between the Napoleonic War 1815 ending and the First World War. Something like 800 people just gone in an instant flash in the most hellish death you can imagine. Capsizing, trapped below, boilers exploding, steam fragments obliterating people anywhere nearby. Complete darkness, and the ship sinks to the bottom of the sea in the Bay of Biscay. So these are horrific events, and again there are ships lost with all hands regularly through this period.
I want to talk, before we kind of wrap up, about one aspect of this shipping history that we recently went to Royal Museums Greenwich, and we were looking at some of the Pirates exhibition there.
Is this the Royal Week? So I was thinking I didn't do this.
No, Dan and I.
Oh, Dan and you, right, okay.
And the Royal We as well. I refer to myself in the third person from now
Always.
on. But what struck me about that exhibition is just the variety within piracy and what that actually looked like and where it was coming from and the different worlds in which pirates were operating in and functioning in different ways as a result of that. Talk to me about that pirate life, say in the 18th, early 19th century. Is it what we see in Pirates of the Caribbean? Is it Treasure Island, or is it something far more nuanced?
I think there were a few less sort of ghosts involved, but
well,
although depending on your point of view. I think pirate there would have been a very, very, very fine line between pirates, merchantmen, and naval officers and or certain naval ratings, and actually in times of peace you've got a massive. All the navy just fires all of its lots of its sailors and lots of its experience of senior sailors. And like ships, petty officers and things, and a lot of them would go and work in the merchant fleet. And part of the merchant fleet might be, if you sailed past a Danish ship and you had and there was, or rather, if you sailed past a sort of Spanish ship and there was a war going on, and you might, there was a fine line between trading and sort of buccaneering, I think. And you see it from Drake onward. So it's as you say, it's everything. It's pirate. It's the dirty world of the transatlantic slave trade. You're down there. You're a ship. You've got some Africans on board. There's another ship trading. You go and take their Africans and sort of kill a few crew members. It's just another little twist in the tail of what is just a sort of monstrous scene going on generally. And in the same way that a bit of so smuggling. Where does smuggling tip over to piracy? You're bringing excise free, tax free brandy into the coast of England, and you sort of shots are fired occasionally with some excise men. You're branded a pirate, whatever. So it's a very, very diverse world. But what's amazing, as I suddenly thought as I was saying this, is that we haven't even talked about sea battles yet, because everyone's perception will be the mass casualty. So we talked about disease and discipline. ships lost at sea. But of course, we haven't even talked about the horror that would be in a sea battle, where you basically, the idea is Nelson's plan was to get as close as you can to the enemy and bombard them at not point blank range, actually at touching range, so much so that when enemy ships catch fire, you have to start throwing buckets of water on your own ship because you're worried the fire's going to spread. I mean, you're interlocked with the enemy ship and you're firing.
Are people jumping over then?
People jumping over. One famous Irishman at the Battle of Trafalgar climbed up the rudder of a French ship and sort of fought his way through the main. It was full Hollywood. It's an extraordinary story. Yeah, it's full. But yeah, and at one stage, HMS Victory, and actually I think it's the Téméraire, a British ship, curiously, crashes into the Redoutable, a French ship, and the French crew had been gathering on the bows. They knew they couldn't beat HMS Victory in a cannon battle. They began the bows to jump onto HMS Victory and take it over by force, hand to hand. And Téméraire just comes out of the smoke, out of nowhere, crashes into her and just fires these carronades, these cutting-edge state-of-the-art guns that just annihilate. I mean, First World War levels of casualties of this French crew. Just this, supersonic pieces of iron just scream through these men, shattering limbs, tearing people.
And
when they do hit wood,
as
they
well,
gouge splinters out. So you've got a foot-long, sharp splinters of wood just sort of flipping through the air, ripping people to pieces. And that's where the surgeon comes in, because he's sort of vaguely, he's vaguely
hiding, and then I'll emerge.
He's down in the depths of the ship, and they're carrying people down.
Yeah.
These long queues. Nelson's carried down at Trafalgar. And he says, and everyone goes, the Admiral's here. And Nelson says, there's nothing the surgeon can do for me. I don't want to jump the queue. And he just puts himself in the corner and slowly drowns in his own blood. But, so the surgeon's just there. His tools are getting blunt and he's sawing limbs off, trying to save limbs that have been smashed, or rather trying to save the human life after a limb has been smashed. So those are the battles that people will know about. And they're terrible. They can be terrible enough, but more people die of disease.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
And weather. I'm going on far too long, but there's the stories in the 7 Years' War where they're working the sails in sub-zero conditions outside Louisburg on the coast of Canada. You can imagine the stuff. Places that we can hardly go today in the winter. They're there trying to work sails and ropes. And I mean, it's just wild.
I think that's one of the things I will take away. We do have a closing question for you, but before we get there, I think that's one of the things I'm going to take away from this conversation is that there's actually very little way that we can really imagine what this would have been like. That I think that was a really good point to go. You think you might be able to, I feel a bit seasick. We're very close together.
And we've seen
actually,
so much Hollywood depiction.
Yeah, because also we don't know just what the months of sleep deprivation, of that kind of diet, perhaps of shortages of food, of the trauma that we've witnessed. Like I don't think we can begin to sort of. You can go, I've climbed a mast and I've in sub-zero temperatures and certainly, but then you.
In your modern gear,
then you had hot chocolate or something.
That kind of soul destroying thing.
Yeah, the psychological and the physical effect is.
And we know from bones of sailors, for example, the Mary Rose sailors, is their skeletons were hammered. They were showing signs of extraordinary hard labour quite early in life.
All dying at 32 or something ridiculous.
Just grind down.
Okay, my final question before we go is this: if you had to pick one ship.
How can you ask me this?
Because it's a podcast and I've been asked to ask questions. No, if you had to pick one ship that you could go on the voyage, be that a battle, be that piracy, be that exploration, whatever it might be, what ship would it be and why?
Well, it's too cruel. It's like asking to choose between your children. But I think there's you'd want to be on a frigate, so a fast, free ship operating by itself. You don't want to be in a big battleship where you're being ordered around by the admiral. There's lots of other battleships around all the time. You're waiting for a battle to occur. So it's 99% boredom, 1% absolute carnage. You want to be on a ship and you're just raiding, so you're just causing trouble. So people might have heard of Thomas Cochrane, Lord Cochrane. He's the character, in fact, who the Master and Commander film and books are based on. His job is just to go around the coast of Europe and just make an absolute nuisance of himself. And he lands in the middle of the night and he captures French shore batteries and blows them up, and he captures ships full of wine and silver, and he pretends he's Danish and attacks a convoy. He's just naughty and brilliant, and he goes on to have this extraordinary career. And he at one stage creates a big floating bomb and sails it towards a French fleet at anchor with a gale rising. He sets the powder thing, jumps off the back of this ship. They row away into this huge storm. The ship blows up, and all the other ships go in and try and attack the French. I mean, it was just sun up to sundown. In fact, beyond that, hijinks.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah,
is the
yeah.
ship I'd like to.
We are overdue a period drama of this. I know there's the film, but
Well,
they
yeah,
only
no,
made
no.
the
They
one,
can,
right? Like there
Disney
needs to
can
be-
do something or something.
Yeah.
And who is your favorite child?
Ah, yes. Well, no.
No. Okay, we won't make you answer that one. Right, Maddy, do you want to take us out on this one?
Sure, yes.
Why not?
Do you not want to answer about the ship yourself?
Oh, I wouldn't know enough about ships to know.
The only ships
No.
you've covered on this
Refuse.
podcast, they've all ended
Yeah,
very,
exactly.
very
Yeah,
No,
badly.
I will say I am a ship history convert. Before I started
Yeah.
doing After Dark, I was like,
You were
I don't care
resistant.
about ship histories. But actually, since doing this, I love them now. It's really, and actually, I was talking to you the other day. I'm thinking about writing about a ship history at some point in the future. They really this world on the sea fascinates me. This little enclosed thing. So I don't have enough broad knowledge to say, but maybe something like the Beagle, where it's a discovery ship and it's you know, like that kind of a thing. I'm a little more
Something
gentler.
gentle.
yeah. And what about you? Do you have one?
Well, I have one in mind, but it's going to be a future book, so I will not
Oh,
say that.
Oh, good
But-
ordering ship.
Hey,
Yeah, well, there we go.
nice.
But if I could be not an active participant, but a fly on the wall where I don't die and I don't have to partake of the diet or the punishments or anything, it would have to be the Terror. I'd want to go and see
Oh
what
my
happened to
God.
those men, what went wrong there.
Definitely.
Except you'd never be able to come back and tell us.
Yeah, but is the
but-
fly?
Well, no, I'd have like a hot water bottle and like a coat, and I'd be fine. I'd just be observing, and they wouldn't be able
Right.
to see me. Like I just like to see what happens.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Thank you so much to Dr. Anthony Delaney and Dr. Maddy Pelling. Always great to have them on the show. Make sure you go and check out their channel, After Dark, Myths, Misdeeds, and the Paranormal. And if you enjoyed this History Hit Universe collab, let us know in the comments, and we'll do some more. Bye for now.